Hello everyone, today I'm going to be reviewing Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. So Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, it came out in 1969 and it was directed by George Roy Hill and it stars Paul Newman, Robert Redford and Katharine Ross. And this film follows the story of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Obviously these guys were real outlaws in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And the film loosely follows the story of them as the two of them and the Hole in the Wall gang. They start off by doing train robberies and bank robberies and things like that, but they eventually have to go on the run because there's this posse out of them who are going to chase them down and arrest or kill them. So a lot of the film is spent with Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid on the run, where they eventually flee to Bolivia in South America. We also see Katharine Ross in this film. She plays Etta, who is the Sundance's kid girlfriend, although Butch Cassidy is also obviously in love with her as well. What really makes this film work, I think, is the on-screen presence, that on-screen pairing of Paul Newman and Robert Redford. Really, they just look so comfortable on screen together. They have so much chemistry. And they actually did another film together, The Sting, which was also directed by George Roy Hill. And yeah, that acting is just brilliant. I mean, they have so many great lines together. Really, the chemistry and the banter between the two of them is really what makes this film work. There's so many funny scenes. Although this film is a Western, it is also very much a comedy as well. So there are so many funny moments in this film, particularly with Paul Newman and Robert Redford with their back and forth chat. There's some scenes where they're shooting and then one of them will get injured and then Butch Cassidy will say, I thought you were supposed to be covering me. You're not doing a very good job of this, and that sort of thing. And it's all just very funny with the back and forth chit chat between the two of them. And it really makes us as the audience really like them. I mean, it's impossible not to like these two characters, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. It's impossible not to sympathise them and not to root for them really, even though they are actually obviously criminals and, you know, what they're doing is not good. But they're just so likeable together on screen. It's impossible not to want them to win in the end and not to root for them as characters, as heroes in this film. One of my favourite scenes is actually when Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid are in Bolivia and they're robbing this bank, but they're having trouble doing it because they can't speak Spanish very well. So Butch Cassidy is trying to say the correct thing. So he gets out a piece of paper and is reading a list of some Spanish phrases about what to say, and he keeps on saying the same thing. And it's all just a very funny scene. And there's scenes like this throughout the film where the film does a very good job of mixing the thrilling aspect of it with the comedy aspect of it. I think one of the most iconic scenes is when Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid are on the edge of this cliff and they have to go and jump off into the water below them, and they're debating whether to do it or not. And the Sundance Kid says that he can't swim, but eventually they just end up jumping in anyway. So I have looked at some other people's reviews of this film, and I think some people do feel like there are some elements of it which maybe don't fit with the rest of it. There is a scene near the start where Paul Newman and Katharine Ross are on a bicycle and they're riding around, and the song Raindrops Keeps Falling on My Head is playing in the background, and it's a very light-hearted, quite comical, almost silly scene, which maybe is a scene which for most films wouldn't belong in a Western. But in my opinion, I really think it works. I really think it's a really nice scene, and it really shows what kind of a characters they are in this film. And it's quite early in the film where obviously things are going well for Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. And obviously later on, when they go on the run, maybe those moments are not there quite as much because they're in danger and, well, they're on the run from the law, obviously. So there's no time for that sort of thing. Some people might feel that the film drags on a little bit in the middle because we get quite a lot of scenes where Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid are on the run, and all they're doing for a lot of the time is they're riding on their horses away from areas, and they're looking back to make sure that they're not being followed or whether they've lost the posse behind them that are chasing after them. But I actually really like these films, and I think you get some really excellent shots of the frontier and the wilderness in these scenes. So having the foreground, we'll have Paul Newman and Robert Redford, and I'll be on a cliff high up, and they'll be looking down across the landscape, and it will really be this massive area, and in a distance you'll see some guys on horses who are chasing after them, and they're really far away. So it's really incredible the way they filmed this when you think about it. The fact they really took this large area and had to make the most of it really fills the screen with what's going on. So I think scenes like this really work. I can understand why people might get a bit bored of these scenes, and some of them do feel a little bit samey. But I think just with Paul Newman and Robert Redford on screen, on their horses, riding across the landscape, I think it's all fantastic, and I think it really, really fits very well. And as a whole, it really is a very important part of the film because it helps the audience connect with these characters. In terms of the action in this film, the scenes are all very well done. So near the start, we get a few scenes where Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, they go to rob these trains. So they set these explosions on the outside of the trains, and then they blow the doors open. And I was amazed by how good it looks. It really looks extremely dangerous, and some of the characters were actually really close to it. So that was all very well done. In terms of the gunfights, there is one really big gunfight in this, which is actually very thrilling and very exciting scene. I think it really makes up for maybe the lack of action in other parts of the film. And it's a very intense, very edge of your seat type scene, and you really actually worry for Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid in the scene, and you want them to be all right, and you want them to get through it. So overall, I'm sure you can tell that I really love this film. I think it's absolutely fantastic. It's possibly my favourite Western of all time, actually. I think it's between this and Shane, which is another Western, but this, I just absolutely love it. It's just such a likeable film and quite a light-hearted Western, although it does have some serious bits as well. And I hope that if you have seen it, then you agree with me, because I'm actually going to give Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid a rating of 10 out of 10, because I think it's an excellent film. And I would recommend it. I'd recommend it to people who like Westerns, and even if you don't like Westerns, since this isn't really a traditional Western, I would also recommend it to you as well. So there we go. So that is Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. So what do you guys think? Have you seen it? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? Please let me know down in the comments what you think about that. Anyway, thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.